Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the EDTNA ERCA Third Green Excellence webinar, Benefits of Green Dialysis. Before we start, I would like to give a brief update for those of you who have not been with us in our previous initiatives on the green topic. So EDTNA ERCA started a green strategy plan in 2011 with the publication of environmental guidelines in dialysis. Project duration was 3 years plus 1 year follow-up. In 2019, the EDTNA ERCA conducted the Green Survey, the purpose of which was to explore the awareness and involvement in environmentally beneficial activities of the EDTNA ERCA volunteers as leaders of the European nephrology community. In 2020, the EDTNA ERCA started a joint project between EDTNA ERCA and B. Braun Avitum, focusing on the reduction of environmental burden of dialysis, because only joint efforts among various stakeholders in renal care can improve the environmental impact of dialysis. And today we are here virtually with our already third webinar. Before we start, on behalf of EDTNA ERCA, I would like to thank B. Braun Avitum for kindly sponsoring this webinar. Also, my personal thanks goes to Green Excellence team members. Without their great contribution, the result would not be as they are today. So, thank you. Now let's go back to our webinar. It's my pleasure to start and present the Green Excellence in Dialysis project update. Next slide, please. I believe it is already well known to everybody that HD or HDF treatment is one of the more natural resource-hungry medical intervention. But did you know that renal units consume more water and electricity and generate more hazardous waste than other hospital departments, and even more than some industries? It gives a certain opportunity to renal units to serve as a green role model for all the stakeholders. As a president of Scientific Association, I would like to encourage you to implement green strategies at your workplace and promote environmentally responsible practice, standards, and behavior. I am convinced that renal units can lead environmental awareness programs in the healthcare sector. So let's take this challenge together. Next slide, please. Today's green webinar and our speakers may help to convince you how easy to implement green strategies and what overall and economic benefits you may expect from this approach. Next slide, please. Here we have today's program. Yitka Pansirova will share with you her long-term experience with environmental management systems, including the expected benefits. Martin Meyer will provide you with practical savings tips from the operations perspective. And finally, Jane Golland will guide you on how to easily evaluate the environmental performance in a renal unit. Please, next slide. During this webinar will be also presented two partial project results, namely set of 10 environmental key performance indicators and environmental app. Next slide, please. Environmental app will help you with initial environmental performance evaluation. However, there would be a need to take additional actions. I have summarized for you some examples and will start with waste management rules. Please keep in mind that the best waste is the one you have never created. Therefore, avoiding waste at its source is always preferable to recycling and incineration. Of course, it's not always possible as we do not live in an optimal world. If the waste is created, then prioritize on reuse, recycling, and proper disposal. Next slide, please. Several steps can be included in your action plan for waste management. Re-evaluate good dialysis practice at your workplace. Avoid waste amount by modifying your clinical practices and procedures. Cooperate with person department responsible for material supplying. Manage waste separation process properly. Evaluate reuse and recycling opportunities. Re-evaluate waste sources on regular basis and search for new opportunities. For example, bicarbonate cartridges. Next slide, please. Action plan for electricity can also include several activities. I would advise you to install electricity meters at your renal unit if not already available. Monitor, measure, and analyze recorded data. Audit energy use at your renal unit. Identify hungry equipment. Think about the chance to replace them. Consult audit result with experts and facility managers. Implement energy saving strategies and programs. Next slide, please. Last but not least, here are some proposals for water savings. Use water resources carefully. Install water meters at your renal unit if not already available. Monitor, measure, and analyze recorded data. Audit water use at your renal unit and identify weak points. Implement water saving strategies and programs. Next slide, please. In conclusion, I would like to highlight the importance of green thinking and would like to invite you to support EDTNA CA and B. Brown Avitum in the Green Excellence in Dialysis project. Please help us promote green awareness at each renal unit. Explain your colleagues why it's beneficial to act responsibly and take environmentally friendly actions. Please remember that even small improvement makes a difference, and I am really confident we can all proceed toward a sustainable renal care. Next slide, please. And I think it will, yes, the last. Thank you for your attention. Now, I am very honored to introduce our speaker, Itka Pansirova. She is a renal nurse and a head nurse at the University Hospital and Private Dialysis Center for 19 years. Since 2006, she is working as quality and environmental manager for Avitum Renal Care Centers. Active EDTNA CA volunteer since 1997. Over the years, she has held a number of volunteer positions. She was key member, project coordinator, executive committee member, president. She is currently EDTNA CA Quality and Environmental Consultant and Green Excellence in Dialysis Project Manager.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In my talk today, I will present benefits of the environmental management system and green strategies in renal care. The reason for this topic is the following. Dialysis treatment saves lives, not the planet. Furthermore, some renal units and dialysis centers may not be aware of the environmental burden they may create and may not have in place environmental programs, management, or green strategies. Implementation of the environmental management system and adoption of green standards is fundamental because dialysis treatment has a large environmental impact. A patient undergoing weekly dialysis treatment utilizes about 18,000 liters of water and up to 900 kilowatt-hours of electricity a year. Furthermore, twice weekly in-center HD has a carbon footprint of 3.8 tons CO2 equivalent per patient a year. The majority of emissions arise from medical equipment, energy use, and patient travel. We know that water consumption in dialysis depends on three major factors: the way the water is discharged from reverse osmosis, Of course, here we need to take into consideration type of reverse osmosis we have on our dialysis centers, the way the dialysate and the infusate are prepared, and the prescription of the dialysis session. In the context of a centralized preparation system, I also need to mention that hemodiafiltration has a higher water demand, up to 30%, than standard HD treatment. Adding specific meters after the water treatment system or for electricity may allow quantifying what is related to dialysis and what is related to other activities at the dialysis center, as well as measuring the effect of action plans. So please ensure you have installed water and electricity meters in your renal center. Also, waste production in renal care can be considered as a significant environmental aspect. The cost of medical waste management is very different across countries. Waste may be calculated by volume or by weight. Final disposal is usually by incineration, which may be a significant source of pollutant and is relatively expensive. Reduction of the quantity of waste product is the first issue and could be applied at all levels, reducing the number of patients starting dialysis by the wise use of conservative and nutritional treatment. Further elements, such as reducing the impact of packaging, shortening lines, or optimizing some dialysis components like already mentioned bicarbonate cartridge, could become possible through the cooperation between all the stakeholders in renal care. Taking into consideration all the figures I just briefly presented, I can say that the environmental management system is the right way forward because coordinates effort to integrate grain protection into an organization, in our case to renal unit. EMS should be reviewed annually to ensure compliance to defined requirements and continuous improvements, but this is something we normally do also with other systems. International Organization for Standardization defines EMS as the part of the overall management system that includes organizational structure, planning activities, responsibilities, practices, procedures, processes, and resources for developing, implementing, achieving, and reviewing the environmental policy. Environmental management system is linked to ISO 14001. This norm was originally developed for industry as a guide to integrate good environmental performance into the organization. It provides a framework for organizations to manage effectively their environmental affairs and allows a certain flexibility in setting the EMS framework, parameters, and conditions. For this reason, it can be easily implemented in care. Perhaps you are still unsure why it's so important to implement the environmental management system in renal care. Here are the answers. Implementation of EMS helps to understand environmental aspects of the provided renal services, define training framework for healthcare staff members, comply more effectively with applicable norms, standards, legal requirements, and various regulations, reduce media consumption and waste disposal amount and cost, strive to proactively minimize pollution and emission to air, reduce risk of environmental accident, have a solid emergency preparedness policy, save money and reduce operating cost, promote your environmental commitment, and stay competitive on the renal market. Implementation of the environmental management system helps a renal unit to transform its environmental strategy and objectives into daily practice. If you will decide to implement the environmental management system apart of others, you would need to define environmental policy and environmental profile, summarize and score environmental aspects coming from your services, analyze and assess the impact of renal unit on the environment, monitor, measure and analyze environmental KPIs, adopt and implement green procedures, introduce green programs, raise green awareness among staff and patients, and audit the system on annual basis. Here we have some examples from daily practice for your inspiration. How may you look like your environmental policy? which is a written statement which outlines a business aims and principles in relation to managing the environmental effects and aspects of its operation. This slide shows how easy can be your register of environmental key performance indicators, in this case for water and electricity consumption. If you do not have access to sophisticated databases or applications, you may start with Accelerate. I know it is not sexy, but it works. Important is to start, be aware of your consumption data, and have available trend analysis. It is also recommended to identify environmental aspects, which are the key elements of organizations' activities. Most significant aspects in renal care are water consumption, electricity consumption, production of hazardous waste, use of chemical substances and disinfectants, but I am confident you would be able to identify and score many others. Our Green Excellence in Dialysis project team defined a set of 10 environmental key performance indicators, and it is my pleasure to introduce them to you on behalf of the project team. Water consumption per 1 HD treatment with target value between 350 and 400 liters. Water consumption per 1 HDF treatment, target value between 450 and 500 liters. Electricity consumption per 1 HDF treatment, target value between 12 and 15 kilowatt hours. Hazardous waste generation per 1 HDF treatment, target value between 1 and 1.2 kilos per dialysis treatment. Frequency of measurement is here recommended on monthly basis. Then we have sustainable use of chemical substances and disinfectants in renal care. Target value 50% of green products without phosphates, colors, and fragrances. Reduction of plastic materials in percent per dialysis center, 10% first year, 5% other years till reaching the goal. Reduction of paper printouts per dialysis center, 10% first year, 5% other years till reaching the goal. Percentage of employees coming to the dialysis center using public transportation, target value 25%. Percentage of employees coming to the dialysis center by bike or walking, target value 25%. Percentage of suppliers with certified environmental management system and energy management system, target value 50%. Here is recommended frequency of measurement on annual basis. I hope you found these tips useful and you will be keen to introduce the environmental management system and green strategies to your colleagues. Please do not wait and start today. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, let's continue with our next speaker, Martin Meyer, and his topic, economic benefits of green dialysis. Martin received a nursing degree in Germany. He has 9 years practice as a nurse in renal care centers, degree in medical engineering, University of Applied Sciences, 8 years B. Brown product manager for dialysis machine, global provider operations manager since 2014 for B. Brown renal care centers. Please start presentation of Martin.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Martin Meyer, and in the next 20 minutes, I will have the pleasure to present to you the economical benefits of green dialysis. Let me start with a look to the political motivation, which might be attractive to companies and organizations to start activities in the field of sustainability. Of course, sustainability is closely linked to costs and budgets. As you can see here, the European Union clearly states to channel money to sustainable activities as part of their ambitious goal to be climate neutral by 2050. This target can, however, only be achieved if companies contribute within their possibilities. After all, in the future, green technologies and businesses will profit more and more from a more ecologic political development by official governmental programs, tax reliefs, or subsidies. Thereof, now is the right time to start appropriate action in order to protect the environment, in our case to save resources and produce less waste within our dialysis services. When we talk about economics, let us have a look on how much an average dialysis center pays for water, energy, electricity, or clinical waste. In this calculation here, you see a center with an overall cost per treatment of 100 euros. 7 of 8 euro out of this could be counted for environmental related cost segments. So 7 to 8% of all costs in that example. Especially in countries and regions with low reimbursement, this amount of money per treatment can affect the profitability quite significantly. Sometimes every euro counts. Saving cost in this segment is highly appreciated by the center managers, as they might spend these savings rather on other, more patient centers, valuable items. Prices, of course, differ heavily between regions, countries, states, and communities. However, in Europe, an average of 4 euro per cubic meter water and 20 to 25 euro cents per the kilowatt hour electricity can be assumed. Price for a kilogram of waste is around 1 euro per treatment. But also here we see big differences. Being aware of all these costs, we may think about in which ways we can contribute. In the end, we want to lower the cost. It might be very often a mix of simple measures and low-hanging fruits, but also more complex technologies or even higher initial investments, which might pay back only after some years. However, for these initial investments, a calculation for the payback is sometimes worth a try. Sometimes the amortization is quicker than we think, but it depends, of course, a lot on the center size and on the turnovers. But let's have a look into the main opportunities. Start with water savings. Water savings can be achieved by operating low-consuming reverse osmosis systems, of course, but also by optimizing RO settings, standby modes, or backwashing intervals. Ask your technician to make a proper check of the system. For dialysis machines, dialysate flows could be optimized by feedback systems or dialysate profiles, with the goal to overall reduce the dialysate volume in total. Next to these specific technical measures, general water-saving measures could be also followed. For example, using rainwater for toilet flushing or similar. For electricity savings, in the first place, use A++ devices, LED lights, movement sensors, and also operate dialysis machines with heat exchangers, which are usually built in all devices nowadays. Also here, consider to activate your RO and also your dialysis machine standby mode, as already mentioned earlier. What you could also do is to check the need of a daily morning heat disinfection of your dialysis machines. Heat disinfections consume very much electricity, so it is worth to consider. Morning disinfections might be overdone, especially between short treatment day intervals. Manufacturers mostly recommend a 72-hour maximum interval between the treatments, so it might not be necessary to disinfect the machines every morning. For waste and plastics, how can we lower the clinical waste and the plastics? First of all, a proper waste separation is essential. And also emptying the bloodlines after treatment is very much recommended. Although this is only an economic saving, not so much a saving of resources, because the amount of plastic you produce will remain the same. Use recyclable or biodegradable cutlery. You could use water automates instead of PET bottles, or possibly use less plastic PPE, like aprons, shoe covers, etc. Of course, we all know that during the pandemic, the use of single-use materials and plastics has increased. However, we should still have in mind to drive it back to normal, or even reduce it to a reasonable amount after the pandemic has been normalized. Very important, always important, are take-back and recycling systems. For example, concentrate canisters and bicarbonate cartridges. Contact your local suppliers for good solutions. Finally, the reduction of carbon footprint. We want to lower the transportation volume of fluids in a clever and modern way. For example, by on-site concentrate production within the renal care center instead of shipping the fluids on the highways. Same is true for saline containers for priming. Dialysis online machines can do the job quite easily, so it's a good alternative to use online priming methods. Now let's look into some examples. Here you see an example of the cost effect after replacing an old RO system with a new one. It's a middle-sized center with roughly 300 treatments per week. The upper blue bars in the diagram show the consumption of the old system, overall consuming 372 cubic meters of water per month. With the new RO system, in green, the consumption could be reduced by 40% to only 232 cubic meters. This saving of 140 cubic meters per month results in a saving of roughly 7,000 euros per year, or almost 50 cents less per treatment. The next example is even more impressive. Again, a replacement of an old RO system. As you can see, it was possible to bring down the consumption of almost 700 liters per treatment down to 300. With a water price of €3.17 per cubic meter, the saving makes a total of almost 18,000 euros per year. So the payback of this investment could have been achieved very easily after a short period of time. Looking into electricity. Here you see an example of a country provider organization with 6 renal care centers. They could achieve an average reduction of electricity of 13%. Most of these clinics could reduce their consumption to the target value of 11 kilowatt hours per treatment session. And how was this achieved? Mainly by the measures I mentioned earlier. Activating standby modes on the machines, reducing the number of heat disinfections in the morning. But also installing LED lights, movement sensors, and so on. It all helped. Looking at the standby mode once again, the standby mode of the dialysis machine alone generates a saving of 7,000 kilowatt hours, assuming an average patient waiting time of 20 minutes. And on the right you see the heat disinfections, which we discussed earlier. So all in all, this would make 7,000 kilowatt hour saving multiplied by 25 euro cents per kilowatt hour would make 1,750 euros per year alone for the standby mode. The reduction of clinical waste might be the most tricky one in our context. First of all, let's have a look at the European Waste Catalog. In there, clinical waste is classified into 2 classes. Infectious waste, which covers everything which had contact with patient blood and fluids, and which is potentially contaminated. The other category is a non-infectious waste, which covers mainly the rest except domestic waste. However, there are different national interpretations on what belongs into which class. For example, in Spain, bicarbonate cartridges, or empty cartridges, are classified as clinical non-infectious waste, but not as domestic waste, generating additional cost. Does it make sense, as it had never any contact with patient fluid? Or in Germany, where most of the extracorporeal circuit can be wasted into domestic waste, unless it is infectious. So these classifications could possibly be discussed with your waste provider, especially when it comes to empty bicarbonate cartridges. Try to redirect these plastic big cartridges from the clinical to domestic waste. Here we find a nice success story of an organization which could achieve to cut down the waste volume and related cost by 50% over the years. Their center started with an average of 1.8 kilograms per treatment and could reduce the weight to below 1 kilo over some years. The head nurse says, well, if we would not have focused on staff education and proper waste separation, and we would have still 1.8 kilograms per treatment as we had in the years before, then we would pay almost double cost as today. It means we could save around 1,000 euros per quarter. Of course, prices during the years are not the same. Everything is more expensive nowadays, but we can at least compensate increasing costs. So you see, this is all possible just with education, proper training, and following some rules. Another example of a small center here, which could achieve to reduce the waste weight from 1 kilo to 900 grams, so 10%, with the result of saving 1,000 euros in the first year. All these improvements were achieved by emptying the bloodlines after treatment and proper waste segregation. So as you can see, it is possible to achieve this saving with relatively simple methods and proper education. 1,000 euro might not sound too much, but if you operate a chain of centers, it will accumulate to a nice total saving after all. Another important factor is the amount and volume of plastic which are used in our services. In one way or the other, we always need to face large volumes of plastics. In particular, let's talk about acid concentrate canisters. In this example, our center with 80 patients performed 12,000 treatments per year. They consume the same amount of canisters, 12,000 canisters per year, 4.7 liters each. These 12,000 canisters, the empty ones, together have a weight of 2,640 kilograms over the whole year. Now, if the center would decide to produce their own concentrate on site by using a concentrate mixing device, the overall plastic volume would be reduced by 98%, down to only 40 kilograms. How is this possible? Instead of single-use canisters, big cartridges with dry acid powder are shipped to the dialysis unit for on-site mixing with permeate fluid. One of these cartridges would produce 800 liters of concentrate. So you would need 68 of these cartridges to cover the same amount of fluid you would have in the canisters. Now one cartridge, one empty one, weighs 9 kilo. So it would make 612 kilograms per year. But as the cartridges are reutilized 15 times, the remaining plastic amount would be reduced down to only 40 kilos over the whole year. In my opinion, a quite amazing and effective way to reduce plastic waste, but also to remove fluid from the roads. And here we find another example. A nice advantage is that the central concentrate systems prevent any waste of fluid leftovers from canisters. So normally you would have a rest fluid in each canisters after each treatment of 200 to 500 milliliters, depending on the treatment time and flow. What happens with the rest? Many times it is drained in the sink due to hygiene protocols. Isn't it a pure waste of money and resources? With central systems, this will not happen. You can utilize literally the the last drop from your tanks. So many reasons speak for a centralized system, but let me make a last calculation about transportation and emissions. The truck with the purple load will carry 33 pellets with 600 liters canister concentrate, or the truck with the green load can carry 88 dry powder cartridges. While both trucks do the same delivery to the target location, the purple load with canisters will cover 20,000 liters of concentrate, while the cartridges in the green truck will cover 7,000 liters, so 3.5 times more. By this, transportation and finally emission of greenhouse gases can be reduced by 70%. Next to the fact that also freight costs, of course, will be decreased. So what is the overall conclusion? Firstly, the benefits of environmental friendly technologies are obvious. We save resources and money. Secondly, political programs will further support sustainable activities of companies and organizations even more in the future. Companies and organizations will benefit. It is worth to calculate sometimes the payback of investments for new devices like ROs, dialysis machines, or concentrate mixing devices. Sometimes the amortization might be quicker as we think. Let technicians optimize the setting of your RO systems and utilize machine features. Activate them to reduce your water consumption. Save water costs by emptying bloodlines. Separate waste properly and challenge the waste class of plastics like big cartridges. Finally, reduce CO2 emission and plastics, save freight costs and the waste of leftover fluids from concentrate canisters by on-site concentrate production. All in all, by the right measures, several thousands of euro of savings can be achieved, which nobody would ever deny to achieve. So let's all contribute to an environmental friendly dialysis service. We will also benefit from it economically. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for your very detailed presentation. And before introducing our last speaker, I would like to encourage our attendees, participants, to write questions in chat or questions and answer boxes, because I see on screen, on my at least screen, I have two boxes, and participants writing in chat box and in question and answer box. But okay, in the end, we will read anyway all your questions, and I hope that our panelists will be connected and could answer. Our last speaker for today's webinar is Jane Golland. Jane is member of the Green Project in Dialysis. Jane is a renal nurse, member of EDTNA ERCA since 2012, and member of the executive committee since 2016, and treasurer for 3 years. Please start presentation of Jane.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Green Excellence in Dialysis webinar. I am happy to present you an application for environmental assessment. This is a useful tool that will help you to evaluate environmental performance in your unit. From our experience in environmental management system, it is absolutely necessary to know where you are before starting to implement new procedures or improvement projects. An environmental checklist developed as a web-based application is a method available for renal care centers to evaluate their environmental performance and find areas for self-improvement through using the management program. The application will help you to make an initial diagnosis on how good is environmental performance in your dialysis center and provide recommendations for areas of additional improvement through using the environmental management programs. The initial diagnosis covers various areas in order to reflect to the users the full picture of environmental status in their unit. The first step of commitment to improvement relies on data collection of self-reporting about water, electricity, and energy use, and of course, achievement of recommended key performance indicators. Use of eco-friendly technologies and products for disinfection, cleaning, and waste management is mandatory for sustainable activities in dialysis unit. For that reason, all these topics are also covered by the application. In addition, there are many non-clinical procedures, such as using the air conditioning, food preparation and delivery, transportation, and much more. All these activities are part of the functioning of dialysis unit and so need to be a part of the environmental status evaluation. And now I would like to introduce how the app works and what benefits it can bring to your daily practices. First of all, the environmental application can be found in the application section on the EDTNA ERCA webpage and will be opened for all users. I'd like to highlight also the user-friendly design of the web-based application. In order to start self-evaluation, you have to click on the EDTNA ERCA environmental checklist button. Then you fill in the environmental checklist that includes 40 questions related to several environmental areas that I already mentioned before. The possible answers are yes, no, or I don't know. After you reply to all questions, you submit the form and press the Evaluate button. According to the results, the system will provide you the current environmental status of your unit. On the screen, you can see an example of the form. The possible results can vary between 0 to 40 points. The system will define the current status of your unit according to the following scale. From 0 to 19 points, much room for improvement. Center is below standards. It is possible that actual or future compliance to some basic environmental legal requirements from your country could be at risk, and you will need to implement new procedures. Between 20 and 25 points, it means average environmental performance. Center performance is the one expected to fulfill basic environmental legal requirements, but still not enough if you want to show your environmental commitment to your stakeholders. Between 26 and 33 points, good environmental performance. Although there are still possibilities to improve, you can be proud of your environmental performance. Continue like this and do your best to find some improvement actions to be implemented, especially if you do or plan some reimbursements in your center. Between 34 and 40 points, well done, excellent environmental performance. You are way over the expected performance of standard dialysis center. Keep it up. In addition to the evaluation of your environmental performance, the system will also provide possible recommendation improvement based on the question that got negative answers. Answers that have not brought you positive points may indicate that you need to focus on improvement in these areas. Based on recommendation, we would suggest developing an action plan and implementing changes in daily practices in order to improve the environmental status of the dialysis unit. The application can be used on a regular basis for evaluation and checking the current status in your dialysis unit. If you get more than 26 points and your status is good environmental performance or excellent environmental performance, the system will provide you with the option to get a certificate of your current environmental status. You need to enter the name of the unit, city, and country, and press the button to generate the certificate. You will see your score and can download the certificate in a PDF format to your computer. Here you can see an example of certificate that can be presented to patients and visitors of your dialysis unit. We invite you to visit the EDTNA ERCA website application section and perform the environmental evaluation of your dialysis unit. We would like to encourage you to develop your personal plan for environmental improvement based on the application recommendation and your local regulations and policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you all for your inspiring presentations. Now is time for questions and answer session. Let's see if our panelists were able to connect. Okay, Yitka, hello.
Hello.
Okay, I see that Martin. Okay, good. And Jane. Oh. Hello, thank you all for your inspiring presentations. And as I said before, a few questions came to our chat box. Probably let's start from the okay, sounds okay. This minute I'm looking, who could be smart to answer. Okay. Yeah, okay, first question. Is the introduction of the green costly? Do you need more nursing assistant staff? Who would like to answer to this question?
I think I already answered this question, so there are already answers, but just to repeat, I would say introduction of green philosophy does not need to be costly at all, because it is about changing of procedures, like talking about clinical side, about emptying of bloodlines, about emptying of bicarbonate cartridges, about proper waste separation. So I would say it is much more about education and about modification of clinical processes and standards. Of course, if new technology would be involved, this is more costly, then this is topic for Martin to answer. But talking about really nursing perspective, I would not expect a need to employ additional staff because of this. Absolutely not.
What about pandemic now? You think that this also could be managed in this way?
I would say, of course, pandemic time was very demanding to all of us. All dialysis centers experienced very difficult time, and it is clear that our key focus was on patient care, and it is not good to change procedures during such a difficult time. On the other hand, some procedures may be more optimal for nurses, I mean also green procedures, and might be less time consuming than standard procedures. So I would say it is always up to concrete dialysis center to evaluate what would be realistic in pandemic time or not. But generally speaking, it is also possible to start with certain improvements also during pandemic. And for example, we know that we had some increase of waste because of personal protective equipment. But here is good point to start to do proper waste separation and not to pay more or not to do wrong separation of waste. So I would say pandemic time is optimal, but it is possible to start gently with some changes and with some green procedures, of course. Yes.
At least to do first steps, you know, in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I see that. Okay, but we could repeat questions from chat box. I think that they more for internal use.
Yeah, and there are also many new questions in question and answer section.
Yeah, I see now.
Like about central concentrate distribution.
I see old ones. But... Ah, it's anonymous. It's also ones where it is environmental app anonymous.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is anonymous. More than this, there is no any database on this project, so it doesn't collect any data from the users. We only have there the security cookies that their purpose to prevent from the repeatable filling the form and the use of robots. So yes, it is anonymous and doesn't collect data.
Okay, but I think that would be nice, you know, to put certificate on on volumes. Should be now it's even better. Okay, second question is in my current workplace. The mixed line packaging has since become non-recyclable and is not being accepted by our local recycling center. Any suggestion?
Yes, definitely. Dialogue with industry partners, because if part of packaging of bloodlines for dialysis is made from paper and second part from plastic, it is not so easy to do proper separation, and it may be also a reason why some waste companies are not so happy to further reuse this type of waste. So definitely dialogue with industry partners among all the stakeholders in renal care would help a lot. And from the same category is also bicarbonate cartridge, when some industry partners put a paper label on plastic, which means that dialysis centers cannot remove this label, and recycling companies are not so keen to have it. Actually, they would love to have this material, because bicarbonate cartridge is usually made from high quality plastic material, but removing a paper label would be additional complication for them. So again, joint dialogue in renal care would definitely help.
Okay, thank you, Itka. What about central preparation of concentrates? Can this be installed in every dialysis center?
I would say that Martin would be the right person to answer this question.
Yeah, thank you.
A little bit technical.
Thank you. So theoretically, it can be installed in every dialysis center. I mean, there's some technical, let's say, background, of course, necessary. You need to check the space. It needs some square meters of space, of course. It needs to be, as the mixing tanks are quite heavy, it might need to be checked whether the ceiling and floor is able to stand the weight. So some technical preconditions, but otherwise, yes. On the other hand, to be honest, you should have at least 50 to 60 patients in the center. Otherwise, it will not pay back so quickly. I mean, the investment, of course, needs to be done. The more patients you have from the beginning, the more treatments you do, the quicker it will pay back. So you should make a calculation. How many treatments are you doing? What do you pay today for your canisters? And what's the calculation for the mixing device? In the end, it could be done, but maybe it's not really economic if the center is too small.
Yes, a difference. Well, thank you, Martin. Second question is, what does key performance indicator stand for?
Key performance indicator means that you are actually measuring concrete values. So to put it into practice in green dialysis, as a key performance indicator, we consider, for example, amount of water or amount of electricity per one dialysis treatment. When we get these figures, we may do benchmarking among dialysis centers or even among different time period in the same dialysis center. And when we actually define concrete goal, then we can easily see actually potentials for improvement. So it would be really my advice, regardless if you work for public or private or university hospital, to really focus on your consumptions of water, electricity, also amount of hazardous waste per dialysis treatment, because you have seen on presentation from Martin how much you can really save. So I would say these actually figures are very important, not just because of saving of the planet, but also because of reduction of operating cost of each dialysis center.
Yes, and thank you, Itka. And as I said, in the beginning of my presentation, that renal units consume more water and electricity compared with other departments, whatever, Yes, I think that we need to do something with this. And second question from Asia Riemann is, how many centers are at this moment working on this issue, and in which country?
Mm-hmm.
Have a list.
I would say nobody has a list, because there is mixture of again of private, public, and university hospitals, and we know that there are several chains of dialysis units who are very much focusing on green dialysis and on monitoring of environmental key performance indicators. So I would say we are talking about hundreds, perhaps even thousands of clinics, at least in Europe. So it is not just pilot project where you would consider that 10 or 20 or 50 dialysis centers would work on something. There are really many dialysis centers with certified environmental management system and focusing on this topic for several years.
From your experience, Itka, coming from this question, private or I don't know, is public sector is more in advance on this topic?
Mm-hmm. I would say private sector is a little bit more advanced, because usually in public hospitals there are several departments in one building, and you do not have everywhere water meters or electricity meters. Of course, opposite can be true. It depends on concrete content, on concrete location. But from my personal experience, private providers are more focusing on quality of care, on cost of their operations. So at least it is my experience, but I do not want to say anything against favor of somebody, because there can be certainly differences.
Thank you. Question from anonymous attendee. How can we start the measurement of water, energy, and waste consumption if our clinic is within a medical center, hospital shared building, and we do not have visibility of the actual consumption? Yeah.
Yeah, it is problem mainly in public hospitals. As I mentioned, there is large building with several floors and several departments, so it is not clear which department has which consumption. I would say it is always good to start with things you may change and you may measure and analyze. I would definitely start with waste management, because you may always have additional scale in your renal unit, and you may really measure how heavy is your weight after
one session after 1 month, and then do a calculation. And of course, it is usually not difficult to install water meter in reverse osmosis, and it is not costly. We are talking about 30-40 euros, and then you may get actually information how much water you use exactly for dialysis, not for other activities within hospital or within renal unit. But we know that the water consumption for dialysis is much higher than we need for other activities at the dialysis center. So I would suggest even with small things and small measurements, and then perhaps as you will have some figures, as you will have some data, it is usually not difficult to convince your bosses and your managers when they see cost-saving potentials.
Thank you. I think we have question for Martin. How often do you recommend heat disinfecting if it's so high in energy consumption?
Yeah, first of all, after each treatment, of course, this is clear. But the question was, is it really needed the next morning? If you have an afternoon shift, for example, you do your last heat infection, citric heat infection normally in the evening, so it's just the night. And most machine manufacturers allow 72 hours between two treatments. So it's really a question on, is it necessary from one day to the other? So I would recommend it maybe over the weekend on a long interval in the morning, yes. But during the week, if you have afternoon shifts until next morning, it's worth a discussion, I would say. Of course, there might be national regulations for this. You have your hygiene protocol, which you need to discuss. But just technically spoken, also if your water quality is good, I mean, you will make your samples frequently. If your water quality is good, I would at least start a discussion about whether it needs to be done every morning.
Are you saying that only rinsing is enough if we have the treatment in the morning, next day?
Only rinsing, separate clean.
Only.
You must do the citric heat disinfection after each treatment, that is clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Regarding water consumption measurement and key performance indicator question, the reverse osmosis system would have a water meter installed or data logged in the system itself. How do we estimate the amount of water used for non-reverse osmosis in a clinic, washroom, hand wash sink, cleaning room, etc.? Any benchmark for such data?
Yes, I would say in optimal situation, of course, we would have a water meter in reverse osmosis and a water meter for the whole renal unit, but it is not always possible. So what I can recommend is to actually read out water meter data from reverse osmosis and compare them with invoices. And then you can easily check from invoices how much you paid for water consumption per year, quarter, month. It depends on the setup with your water company, and then you can actually compare it, and you know how much water you use for other activities in dialysis center. But from our experience, we know that usually water consumption we need for dialysis is about 85% of the total water consumption. So other activities are not so water demanding.
Thank you. Second question for Martin. For electricity usage in a clinic, what are 2-3 components which are the largest consumption in a renal center?
Yeah, good question. I'm sure dialysis machine takes a big amount. That's why I said, please try to activate standby modes and everything. That might be one big electricity user in the clinic. Another topic is air conditioning devices. So here we might also see big differences between older and newer devices. And then you have RO, so the whole water treatment system, which consumes. And I would say these are the biggest ones. And then you have let's say, the domestic users like refrigerators, lights, and all this. But all in all, I would say dialysis machines and air conditioning devices.
Thank you. Thank you. Question to Jane. How often do you recommend filling out the questionnaire environmental checklist?
Okay, it depends on your activities. So you can hear me? It depends on your activities. First of all, I have to set your environmental plan to look for the areas that you can do some improvements, and even the small changes can bring a big sustainable improvement, and then to implement them and to see if it will influence the environmental score in your unit. So it's not the purpose to fill in, it's just the purpose to see where you are and to learn about possible recommendations and improvements and to set the program. So this is the actual the purpose of the application.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, do we have more not answered questions? Who can know? We have question, new one, for clinical waste disposal data. Do we need to separate sharp or not sharp waste?
I would say it is not about clinical waste disposal data. It is also about the safety of staff members. So I would say it is highly recommended to separate the sharps and have them in a separated box. But of course, it is also considered as a hazardous waste. But usually this type of waste is not so much heavy. So because of staff safety, I would say it should be separated, but it also depends on your contract with the waste management company or how hospital deals with waste management, because I have seen also that in some countries it is not just separated sharps in special containers, but it is allowed to put these containers with sharps into hazardous waste bags. So it depends also on local practice and on local legal requirements.
Jitka, I think the question was more related to data, whether it belongs together to the other clinical.
Yeah. Sorry. So then it belongs together. Yeah. Apologies, too many questions.
Okay. I thought about the packaging because, as you, Jitka, said, there could be different requirements, if we're looking to countries' regulations,
Yeah. But as for data, of course, dialysis needles belong together to hazardous. Yeah. Thank you, Martin.
Question from Maria Tavares about your experience. Have you already have a dialysis unit free of paper?
Yeah, it's possible and it really works. You have to get used to it, I have to say. But if it's all properly set up and you have a clinical information system which records on site, and why not? You don't need to print out the treatment protocols. If you have everything in place, you don't need this.
But it probably depends on machines, and
Yeah, but most manufacturers offer a clinical information system which can be connected the one way to the other. So, and it is possible, but it's not, let's say, from one day to the other. You need to get used to it for some time, but once it's really established, it's a very good way it works, yes.
Good. Way of improvement. Second question, for clinical waste disposal data, do we need a separate, but it's the same questions. I think that we answered to all questions. We have a comment from Ber Omen. This is not a question, but only sharing my compliments on topic and EDTNA responsibility on the environment and the well-organized event. Thank you Bear, thank you for the informative presentation. Thank you, team. Well done. What else? Now I have message from our technical support. We can show our app video if you want, Jane. Katerina, could we show the video from Jane? Thank you.
And now you can see how application works in real. First of all, you have to visit EDTNA ERCA website, education section, applications page. There you will find environmental checklist and application. Here is environmental checklist. You have to answer 40 questions. I already answered them. You can see that all numbers are green. If you miss any questions, so the system will not allow you to go forward. Now I can evaluate the questions. So I have to press evaluate button. The system will ask me if I really want to do evaluation. So I answered yes. And then you can see I got 32 points. It means good environmental performance, and system provided me with some recommendation for the improvement. We would like to encourage you to go through all these recommendations and develop your own plan for environmental improvement. Because my performance is good, I also can generate certificate. I have to fill in the name of my institute, my city and country, and then I can generate certificate. And now I can download it to my computer. And here is my certificate, good environmental performance, the name of my hospital, my city and my country, and the date of the evaluation. You can present this certificate to your colleagues, patients, and other visitors of your unit. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that now it is clear how to use the application. And we would like to invite you to visit the EDTNA ERCA website, application section, and to evaluate your environmental performance. Thank you very much.
You just now get a chance to see how application works, and I really would like to encourage you to fill it in and to check where you are with this green initiative. So I think that one question more. Okay, let's answer to the last question, and probably we could close our webinar. Okay, on the environmental app, who does the certification of the data to issue the certificate? From what I can see, anyone can put any answers to suit a better score to have the certificate, right?
Probably I will answer. If you want to play a game and to try it, okay. But actually, as I said, the purpose is to evaluate and to do a real work and to also save money, according to the Martin presentation, and to do your best, not just to fill in and put the certificate. Finally, it's it's your unit, your area, your city, your country, and we would like to help you to be more environmental friendly. This is the purpose, and not just to fill in and to get the paper.
And perhaps, if I may add, we are talking about validated tool, which means that actually there is a harmonized approach how to classify or how to evaluate answers from all the users. So it means if you will, or somebody, not exactly you, but if somebody would feel something not properly, then of course certificate will not be issued properly, because you can never achieve excellent or good environmental performance, because this is validated and tested application.
Thank you. Yeah, it depends, you know, on what you wish, you know, to do with this green initiative, you know. And the last question from me to, I don't know, to Yitka probably, is the introduction of green dialysis principle costly?
I would say it depends. It depends what everything is included in green principles. But generally speaking, this introduction is not costly. I would say opposite is the true, because when you actually introduce the green strategies, programs, principles, call it whatever, you immediately identify several possibilities for modification, improvement, optimization. So you may very quickly realize that this is actually very nice cost-saving project. So I would say it does not need to be costly, and you may see that there are really nice benefits which you realize later on, not just in the beginning of implementation.
How motivates staff in general, you know, to do something on this issue? I can imagine, you know, you're in clinic and you're giving, you know, okay, do this, do that, and yeah.
Yeah, I would say, I would say it is about responsibility of all of us to contribute to the future of our planet, and to be convinced that this is the right step forward to think green and introduce green principles, because this is something we are normally doing when we are home. We are really very careful about water consumption, about electricity consumption, which type of refrigerator or washing machine we are buying, if this is really energy consuming, and so on. So I would say I would say that we should actually extend this approach also to our workplaces and to all areas of our life.
Yes, at home you involved directly, you know, because you are paying the bills, you know. But how for I don't know, for cleaner, you know, how to make her motivated. Sometimes, yeah, you need to repeat and to give examples 10 times, and probably at 11 will work.
Yeah, I would say education is fundamental, like in all other areas of our business and activities. So I think education and good examples or success stories or best practice is the right way forward. And of course, it takes some time to actually convince your colleagues that it makes sense. But I would say we are all human beings, and we have some doubts in the beginning when we introduce something new. But I am very happy that EDTNA ERCA is focusing on green promotion and on green awareness, because we know from own experience and own practice that green dialysis makes sense, and what Martin presented as best practice and good example what new technology can do for us. I think these are perfect answers. Yes, it makes sense.
Yeah, each morning, you know, Martin could come to the dialysis clinic and show numbers, you know, instead of deep disinfection, you know.
So then ask Martin, please.
Okay, thank you all for your.
I think that numbers are working really good, especially if they're the sign of euro after the number. So this data can be presented in the units, and there may be some benefits for, or some competition between units of savings may raise the motivation of the regular nurses to be more environmental friendly.
Yeah, but I think that Martin can also repeat advantages of central concentrate distribution, because it makes life of nurses and staff easier. You do not need to carry any more heavy canisters. So which means that there are also practical benefits for nurses and other staff members. And at the same time, of course, this is green approach, but you know, this makes sense. So perhaps Martin would like to comment.
Yeah, it fully makes sense. I mean, okay, we have the environmental effect. What we said is clear. Yeah, you have less fluid on the roads. Then you have you avoid to waste all this rest fluid in the canisters, which you normally have 200, 500 milliliters left in a canister. What do you do with it? You waste it some probably. So this is all avoided by having the big tanks. And third, as Jitka said, nurses or whoever is doing this, you don't need to carry these canisters from the storeroom to the treatment places anymore. So what I did in my times, I don't know, 3 times a day, I had my little wagon and I had it full with canisters, and I had to walk to the aisles 3 times, 4 times a day. And this is all not needed anymore. You don't need to carry, you don't need to lift it. Actually, it's also good for economic, for your backs, saving your backs, so for your health. So why not? Yes. But of course, it is related to some investment, and this is what I said. Maybe you can convince your bosses about the positive effects here. It's worth a try, I would say.
But Martin, you said this advice, and it could work only for bigger dialysis center.
Well, I said it could be done in smaller centers, but then of course, you know, payback will take longer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think that it is time to close our webinar. And thank you all for your inspiring presentation and your time being with us. We hope that our attendees enjoyed the presentations. The recording of the webinar will be uploaded on our website in the next few days. At the end of the webinar, a questionnaire will appear. I kindly ask to all of you to fill it in, as your opinion really counts for us in order to improve these webinars in the near future. The next EDTNA ERCA webinar, humoral response to COVID-19 vaccine in hemodialysis patients, will be held in 2 weeks' time on July 26th at 2 o'clock Central Europe summertime. Also, I would like to take opportunity and remind all of you that EDTNA ERCA International Conference in September will be held virtually, and we believe it will offer excellent learning and knowledge sharing opportunities among renal healthcare professionals from different parts of the world. So please do not miss the yearly registration deadline, which will end soon, June 15. For the scientific program, other green initiatives, and other EDTNA ERCA activities, please visit our website. So many thanks for listening. Take care, stay healthy and safe, and have a great afternoon. Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.